Welcome to this edition of the Click and Pledges Fundraising Command Center podcast, where we talk the why, the what, and the how in the Click and Pledges ecosystem.
And this is the Why series. We are here to peel back the layers on the strategic decisions that impact your mission and your bottom line.
Today, we are starting with something deeply personal, something that probably causes you, the listener, a moment of profound internal frustration several times a week.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Right. I want you to picture the scene. You've bought a single item, a granola bar, maybe a black coffee, and you go to pay with your card. The person behind the counter swivels that digital payment tablet.
The infamous iPad flip.
And you are instantly confronted with options. 18%, 20%, 25%, 30%. And then, often tucked away, is that small, sometimes ambiguous button for no tip.
It's that instant, isn't it? That minimal cost item quietly balloons, and you feel the immediate hot spike of social pressure.
You're trapped.
You're momentarily trapped between your personal budget and, your desire not to look like a terrible human being in front of a stranger who is watching you make a financial decision.
Yeah.
That entire psychological operation is what we call tipflation, driven by guilt economics.
Tipflation is a term that really crystallized around, 2022 and 2023?
Yeah, that's right.
Describing this massive, unprecedented expansion of gratuity culture into corners of retail life where it just never existed before. Crucially, it's characterized by these absurdly high default percentages. You're being asked for a 25% tip for a transaction that involved zero table service.
And that technological coercion is the key differentiator. Unlike traditional economic inflation, tipflation is a silent technological mechanism. It's not about rising commodity costs. It's about extracting money purely through engineered social pressure.
So our goal in this deep dive is to unpack the psychological toll of this widespread extraction culture.
And show you exactly why this growing consumer resentment is one of the most dangerous dynamics currently impacting donor conversion and long-term retention in the nonprofit sector.
Our mission today is to demonstrate with hard data that treating supporters like digital ATMs is costing organizations significant, measurable, and avoidable revenue.
Let's start by just grasping the scale of the financial pressure this technology is putting on the everyday consumer. The research is truly astonishing.
It is astonishing. The average American is spending approximately $500 annually on tips they explicitly state they would rather not give.
$500.
Think about that number. That's nearly $38 every month in what researchers have now clinically labeled guilt-induced gratuities. That's a real heavy tax on everyday life.
And this feeling of being squeezed, it's not a fringe experience. Well over half of respondents, we're talking 56%, report feeling regular pressure to tip higher than they want or tip when they feel it's unnecessary.
And that pressure is entirely manufactured by the digital interface.
Completely.
That's the real shift, the digital difference. If you think back 10 years, you had the cash tip jar. If you walked past it without contributing, it was a sin of omission.
Right. You just ignored it. It was private. Nobody really knew or cared.
But the swiveling screen changes the ethical calculus entirely. It turns the act into what Cornell researchers call a sin of commission.
A sin of commission. I like that.
You have to actively engage with the screen and select the option that says no tip. That action is public, often visible to the person who just served you. This face-to-face element, combined with the public display of your financial decision, creates immediate, powerful coercion. You are forced to broadcast your choice.
Oh, absolutely. I felt so cheap the other day, I practically apologized to the screen for choosing a lower option.
Exactly. That feeling of momentary shame is exactly what the technology is designed to leverage.
Precisely. And here's where the business strategy starts to cannibalize its own future. The short-term gain is undeniable. Research shows that customers who feel observed while tipping leave significantly higher tips.
Of course they do.
But those same customers are simultaneously less likely to return to that business and feel profoundly less generous or positive about the act of tipping itself.
It's a classic negative feedback loop. The business maximizes the current transaction by exploiting social pressure, but they poison the well. They exchange a small immediate gain for a huge long-term erosion of loyalty. Customers feel manipulated, not appreciated, and manipulation is a powerful deterrent to returning.
And the consumer backlash reflects this erosion of trust. We are seeing massive resistance statistics. Almost one-third of consumers, 29%, say tipping has gotten out of hand. And a staggering 63% now report having negative views on tipping culture overall.
63% negative views is a loyalty crisis, and the data shows they want control back. 72% of respondents oppose automatic service charges.
And 40% oppose businesses even suggesting tip amounts. They don't want their choice to be hijacked by defaults.
So the actionable insight here is that Tipflation isn't just an irritation, it has real economic consequences for the businesses engaging in it.
A huge one. We know 17% of consumers have cut back on their overall spending, avoiding restaurants or shops entirely, because the addition of guilt-induced tips is simply increasing their cost of living too much.
Continuous extraction leads to avoidance behaviors.
It has to.
So if Tipflation teaches us that coercion and engineered guilt erode customer loyalty and drive avoidance, how exactly does that same consumer pattern translate to the world of charitable giving?
Well, that's the core question.
That friction you feel at the coffee shop is identical to the friction created by asking donors to cover processing fees.
It is the exact same dynamic, but with a critical difference in framing. This is the nonprofit parallel, and it often hides behind what we call the illusion of free. We dove into this specifically in an earlier deep dive episode 7, the illusion of free fundraising services.
Let's talk about that illusion. You have platforms marketing themselves as having a 0% platform fee, but they often achieve that number by shifting the processing cost to the donor using pre-checked boxes or sliders. They are performing the charitable equivalent of the tablet flip.
That's right. The platform gets to advertise that they are free, which sounds noble, but in reality, they are making the donor the product or, the target of the extraction. They leverage that moment of generosity to recoup costs they should arguably absorb as the cost of doing business.
Wait, isn't there a fundamental ethical difference here? A tip is extra money for a person or a business owner. Covering a processing fee ensures 100% of the donor's intended gift goes directly to the cause. Aren't mission-driven donors more willing to accept that trade-off?
That's a necessary question. And logically, yes, it sounds like a good deal. But psychologically, the research shows that the framing destroys the connection.
How so?
Giving is fundamentally an emotional System 1 decision. It's fast, generous, and mission-driven. When you introduce the prompt to cover processing fees, platform costs, or transaction fees, you force the donor to switch into System 2 thinking. Slow, rational, and transactional.
Oh, I see. You're replacing the generous feeling of making a difference with mental math.
Exactly. You break the emotional spell. The donor stops thinking about the starving children or the shelter animals and starts thinking, why do I have to pay for the cost of them processing my money? Am I being nickel and dimed? Is this organization trying to hide fees?
And that hesitation is the moment they look for the no button.
Or worse, they look for the exit button.
I think the most visible example of this extraction culture running wild was the controversy surrounding GoFundMe.
Oh, absolutely. They explicitly shifted to an optional tip model for their own platform costs.
And that optional tip default was set aggressively high. We saw reports showing defaults set in the 15% to 16.5% range.
Which is incredible. The donor had to actively reduce or opt out of that high default tip on top of the actual donation amount, on top of the standard card processing fees.
They were triple dipping.
They were triple dipping using guilt as the leverage point.
And the backlash peaked when they automatically generated over 1.4 million donation pages for nonprofits without those organizations' knowledge or consent.
Yeah, that was a huge problem. This wasn't just poor management. It was forcing legitimate nonprofits into a guilt extraction model that they never authorized, fundamentally undermining the trust donors have in those specific organizations.
That was extraction at scale, masquerading as convenience.
It created friction, hesitation, and deep suspicion. And once that transactional thinking takes over, the potential donor's guard goes up.
Okay, so now we get to the numbers that should stop every nonprofit leader in their tracks. We've established the psychological cost. Let's look at the financial devastation this practice causes.
Here is the core data shock. We have a critical finding from a controlled experiment conducted by the American Cornerstone Institute. Simply asking donors to cover the processing fees results in a 38.5% decrease in conversion rates.
38.5.
Let that number sink in. More than 1/3 of potential donors abandon the gift entirely when they are confronted with that extra request.
So more than a third of the gifts just evaporate. You are paying the price of losing 38.5% of your mission support in the name of recovering, what, a 3% transaction fee?
Let's make the math visceral, because this is the core reason we advocate so strongly against this strategy. We want you to see this loss of revenue clearly. Imagine you successfully prompt 1,000 people to attempt a $50 donation.
Okay.
Your goal is to capture that modest 3% processing fee, which is $1.50 per person.
If we assume, conservatively, that your standard processing fees are 3%, the 1,000 completed donations at $50 would net your organization approximately $48,500. That's your baseline.
Now, let's apply the documented conversion massacre. The fee request causes 385 people, the devastating 38.5%, to abandon the gift entirely. You're only left with 615 completed gifts.
Wow. So even if every single one of those remaining 615 donors successfully covers the 3% fee, increasing their average gift slightly, your total net revenue only comes out to a best-case scenario of around $31,600.
You have just lost approximately $17,000 in net revenue, in real mission dollars, in a failed attempt to recover that initial $53.
The math doesn't work.
The modest increase in average gift size is mathematically and strategically bankrupting compared to the immense cost of conversion loss.
And that's just the immediate hit. What about the long-term relationship? The retention penalty has to be just as costly.
It confirms the transactional damage. Research shows donors who cover transaction costs on the very first donation are 14% less likely to donate again in the future.
So it's a double hit.
It is. They internalize that first interaction as one of friction and extraction, not one of pure generosity. They feel nickel and dimed, and they don't return to repeat the annoying experience.
This leads us directly to our strategic position here at Click and Pledge. We do provide the cover the fees feature because, look, we know organizations occasionally need it for specific compliance or accounting purposes.
However, based squarely on this research, the 38.5% immediate conversion drop and the 14% long-term retention penalty, we actively and strongly recommend against enabling this feature by default. It is bad strategy and worse relationship management.
It seems like a simple, logical conclusion, but it requires prioritizing the donor experience over that short-term optimization.
Exactly. Our core belief is that the ethical choice, absorbing the cost of acquisition, is also the strategic choice. That processing fee is the cost of acquiring and stewarding a committed supporter.
Right.
Passing that fee to the donor at the moment of generosity turns a relationship into a transaction. You are leveraging guilt, and as we saw with the Tipflation data, guilt leads to avoidance and resentment.
And we should acknowledge the tragedy here. These systems were often designed with good intentions. Nonprofits genuinely want 100% of that dollar to go to the cause, which is a powerful message.
Of course. But the execution backfired dramatically. The road to donor fatigue and customer resentment was paved with these well-meaning attempts to optimize every single touch point.
So when you turn every interaction into an opportunity to ask for more, another checkbox, another slider, and another prompt, the donor's primary memory of your organization becomes transactional rather than relational. We've seen that digital technology has made extraction effortless, leading to unprecedented backlash in both consumer tipping and charitable giving. That sense of being squeezed, manipulated, or guilted is the common thread that damages both customer and donor loyalty.
So what does this all mean for you as you review your current fundraising pages? The question isn't whether you can technically capture every possible dollar at checkout. The fundamental strategic question that drives your organization's future is this: are you building a relationship or conducting an extraction?
And the data is unequivocal.
Extraction is expensive, and it drives away long-term supporters.
That is a truth worth considering as you audit your current digital strategies. Today, we covered the why this strategy fails, drawing the clear, data-driven parallel between tipflation and the guilt economics of donor conversion.
In our follow-up deep dive, we will pivot entirely to the how, exploring alternative, proactive strategies for transparent pricing, how to message overhead costs without triggering donor guilt, and the stewardship models that drive retention instead of focusing on short-term extraction.
For more information about this deep dive and all Click and Pledge products, make sure to visit clickandpledge.com and request for a one-on-one training or demo, whether you are a client or curious about our platform. Just ask us, and we will gladly get together with you to chat.
Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to stay up to date with all the latest and greatest features of the Click and Pledge Fundraising Command Center.